When 20,000 people were screaming his name, he suddenly stopped the music. And what he did next, for one little lost girl, silenced an entire arena. It was a warm summer night in Memphis. The lights of the Mid-South Coliseum glowed like a halo, and the air was filled with excitement. Elvis Presley was about to walk on stage. Every seat was taken, every fan screaming, every camera flashing. People didn't just come to hear his voice. They came to feel something bigger than music. In the crowd that night was a young mother named Sarah, holding the tiny hand of her 5-year-old daughter, Amy. Amy had spent weeks counting down to this night. She wore a little homemade shirt that said in red glitter letters, "Amy loves Elvis." She was trembling with joy, clutching her ticket like it was treasure. But in the chaos of people moving and shouting and lights flashing, something went terribly wrong. A sudden push from behind, quick shuffle in the crowd, and Amy's small hand slipped out of her mother's grasp. In an instant, Sarah turned around, and her daughter was gone. Amy was lost in a sea of thousands. The lights blinded her. The noise was deafening. She tried to call for her mother, but her voice was too small to rise above the music in the crowd. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she wandered closer to the stage, scared and shaking, holding her little sign tight to her chest. Then something unexpected happened. Elvis, in the middle of performing, noticed her. Amidst the dazzling lights and chaos, his eyes caught a small, trembling figure near the front barrier. He paused just for a moment, and his expression changed. He could see that the little girl wasn't cheering. She was crying. He raised his hand gently, signaling the band to stop. The music faded. The crowd slowly went quiet, confused at first, then completely still. And in that silence, Elvis spoke into the microphone. "Hold on, everybody. We got a little one down here who's lost." You could hear his voice soften. It wasn't the voice of a superstar now. It was the voice of a father. It's a man who saw a child in pain. He walked to the edge of the stage, crouched down, and reached out his hand. The security guards looked unsure, but Elvis waved them back. "It's okay," he said softly. He looked into Amy's tearful eyes and asked, "Hey, honey, what's your name?" Between sobs, she whispered, "Amy. I can't find my mom." The audience watched in stunned silence. 20,000 people quiet enough to hear one small child speak. Elvis smiled gently. "Don't you worry, sweetheart. We're going to find your mom together." He lifted her up into his arms carefully, tenderly, and turned back toward the microphone with Amy resting against his shoulder. The spotlight followed them. The image was unforgettable. The king of rock and roll holding a frightened little girl in front of thousands. Then Elvis said, "If anyone's missing a beautiful little angel named Amy, she's right here with me." The audience erupted, not in wild cheers this time, but in emotion. People were waving, calling out, scanning the seats. And then, near the middle section, a woman stood up, crying uncontrollably. It was Sarah's security helped her through the crowd as the arena parted like a sea. Elvis smiled as he watched her come closer, and Amy spotted her mother and reached out her arms. When the two finally reunited, the entire stadium broke into applause. It wasn't just noise, it was a wave of relief, of love, of shared humanity. Even grown men were wiping their eyes. Elvis gently handed Amy back to her mother and said with a grin, "Now that's what I call finding the right harmony." The crowd laughed and cheered again. Then he looked at Sarah and said quietly, "You both stay right here in the front, okay? You've earned the best seats in the house tonight." For the rest of that show, Amy sat safely beside her mom, only a few feet from the stage. Every time Elvis glanced their way, he gave a little wink or wave. Between songs, he'd make a funny face, just to see Amy smile again. But for everyone watching, something had changed. The concert no longer felt like just another performance. It felt like a shared story. A moment of pure compassion that everyone there would remember for the rest of their lives. When the final song ended, and Elvis bowed, the audience rose to their feet. The applause went on and on. But this time, it wasn't for the music. It was for the man behind it. After the show, Sarah would later tell reporters that she came that night just to give her daughter a memory, but she left with a miracle. She said, "He didn't just find my child. He reminded me that kindness is still alive in this world." And in the days that followed, that story spread across newspapers, radio shows, and TV screens. People didn't talk about what songs he sang. They talked about what he did. It wasn't about fame or glory. It was about one man at the height of his career, stopping everything to care for a child he'd never met. That's what made Elvis more than just a performer. It's what made him human. Because true greatness isn't measured by how loud the crowd cheers, it's measured by the quiet moments when you stop to help someone in need. And on that night in Memphis, under the blinding lights and roaring applause, Elvis reminded the world that compassion will always be louder than fame. If this story touched your heart, share it. Because somewhere out there, someone needs to be reminded that kindness still changes everything.